and that prior experience has taught that the female granola cruncher tends to define herself in opposition to what she sees as the unconsidered and hypocrisy-bound attitudes of, quote, bourgeois women, and is thus essentially unoffendable, rejects the whole concept of propriety and offense, and views so-called honesty of even the most brutal or repellent sort as evidence of sincerity and respect, getting, quote, real, the impression that you respect her personhood too much to ply her with implausible fictions and leave very basic natural energies and desires uncommunicated. Not to mention, to render your own indignation and distaste complete, I'm sure, the fact that extremely, off-the-charts pretty women of almost every type have, from my experience, tend all to have a uniform obsession with this idea of respect, and will do almost anything anywhere for any fellow who affords her a sufficient sense of being deeply and profoundly respected. I doubt I need to point out that this is nothing but a particular female variant of the psychological need to believe that others take you as seriously as you take yourself. There is nothing particularly wrong with this, as psychological needs go, but yet of course we should remember that a deep need for anything from other people makes us easy pickings. I can tell by your expression what you think of brutal candor. The fact is that she had a body that my body found sexually attractive and wanted to have intercourse with, and it was really not any more noble or complicated than that. And she did indeed turn out to be straight out of Central Granola Cruncher casting, I should stress. She had some kind of monomaniacal hatred for the American timber industry, and professed membership in one of these apostrophe-heavy Near Eastern religions that I would defy anyone to pronounce correctly, and believed strongly in the superior value of vitamins and minerals in colloidal suspension rather than tablet form, etc. And then, when one thing had been led stolidly by me to another, and there she was in my apartment, and we had done what I had wanted to do with her, and had exchanged the standard horizontal compliments and assurances, she was going on about her obscure Levantine denomination's views vis-à-vis energy fields and souls and connections between souls via what she kept calling, quote, focus, and using the quote, L word itself several times without irony or even any evident awareness that the word has, through tactical overdeployment, become trite and requires invisible quotes around it now at the very least. And I suppose I should tell you that I was planning right from the outset to give her the special false number when we exchanged numbers in the morning, which all but a very small and cynical minority always want to. Exchange numbers. A fellow in Tad's torch study group's great uncle or grandparents or something have a vacation home just outside Milford and are never there, with a phone but no machine or service. So when someone you've given the special number calls the special number, it simply rings and rings. So for a few days, it's usually not evident to the girl that what you've given her isn't your true number, and for a few days allows her to imagine that you've just been extremely busy and scarce, and that this is also perhaps why you haven't called her either, which obviates the chance of hurt feelings and is therefore, I submit, good, though I can well Q. Yes, and so in the anecdote there she is, blithely hitchhiking along the interstate, and on this particular day, the fellow in the car that stops almost the moment she puts her thumb out happens to... She said she knew she'd made a mistake the moment she got in. The car. Just from what she called the energy field inside the car, she said, and that fear gripped her soul the moment she got in. And sure enough, the fellow in the car soon exits the highway and exits off into some kind of secluded area, which seems to be what psychotic sex criminals always do. You're always reading secluded area in all the accounts of, quote, brutal sex slayings and grisly discoveries of unidentified remains by a scout troop or amateur botanist, etc. Common knowledge which you can be sure she was reviewing, horror-stricken, as the fellow began acting more and more creepy and psychotic even on the interstate, and then soon exited into the first available secluded area. Q. Her explanation was that she did not in fact feel the psychotic energy field until she had shut the car's door and they were moving, at which time it was too late. She was not melodramatic about it, but described herself as literally paralyzed with terror. Though you might be wondering, as I did when one hears about cases like this, as to why the victim doesn't simply bail out of the car the minute the fellow begins grinning or acting erratic or casually discussing how much he loathes his mother and dreams of raping her with her LPGA-endorsed sandwedge and then stabbing her 106 times, etc. But here she did point out that the prospect of bailing out of a rapidly moving car and hitting the macadam at 60 miles, at the very least you break a leg or something, And then as you're trying to drag yourself off the road into the underbrush, of course, what's to keep the fellow from turning around to come back for you? Which in addition, let's keep in mind that he's now going to be additionally aggrieved about the rejection implicit in your preferring to hit the macadam at 60 mph rather than remaining in his company, given that psychotic sex offenders have a notoriously low tolerance for rejection, and so forth. Q. Something about his aspect, eyes, the quote energy field in the car. She said she instantly knew in the depths of her soul that the fellow's intention was to brutally rape, torture, and kill her, she said. And I believed her here, that one can intuitively pick up on the epiphenomena of danger, sense malevolence in someone's aspect. You needn't buy into energy fields or ESP to accept mortal intuition. Nor would I even begin to try to describe what she looks like as she's telling the story, reliving it. She's naked, hair spilling all down her back, sitting meditatively cross-legged amid the wrecked bedding and smoking ultralight merits from which she keeps removing the filters because she claims they're full of additives and unsafe. Unsafe as she's sitting there chain-smoking, which was so patently irrational that I couldn't even bring... And some kind of blister on her Achilles tendon, from the sandals, leaning with her upper body to follow the oscillation of the fan. So she's moving in and out of a wash of moon from the window whose angle of incidence itself alters as the moon moves up and across the window. All I can tell you is that she was lovely. The bottoms of her feet dirty, almost black. The moon so full it looks engorged. And long hair spilling all over, more than beautiful, lustrous hair that makes you understand why women use conditioner. Tad's boon companion Silverglade telling me she looks like her hair grew her head instead of the other way around, and asking how long estrus lasts in her species in droll ho-ho. My memory is more verbal than visual, I'm afraid. It's on the 6th floor and my bedroom gets stuffy. She treated the fan like cold water and closed her eyes when it hit her. And by the time the psychotic fellow in question exits into the secluded area and finally comes straight out and indicates what his true intentions are, apparently detailing certain specific events and procedures and implements, she's not the least bit surprised. She said she'd known the kind of hideously twisted soul energy she'd gotten into the car into, the kind of pitiless and unappeasable psychotic he was, and what sort of interactions they were headed for in this secluded area, and concluding that she was going to become just another grisly discovery for some amateur botanist a few days hence, unless she could focus her way into the sort of profound soul connection that would make it difficult for the fellow to murder her. These were her words. This was the sort of pseudo-abstract terminology she... And yet at the same time I was now captivated enough by the anecdote to simply accept the terminology as a kind of foreign language without trying to judge it or press for clarification. I just decided to presume that focus was her obscure denomination's euphemism for prayer, and that in a desperate situation like this, who was really in any position to judge what would be a sound response to the sort of shock and terror she must be feeling? Who could say with any certainty whether prayer wouldn't be appropriate? Foxholes and atheists and so on. What I remember best is that by this time it was, for the first time, taking much less effort to listen to her. She had an unexpected ability to recount it in such a way as to deflect attention from herself and displace maximum attention onto the anecdote itself. I have to confess that it was the first time I did not find her one bit dull. Care for another?